So this is some of the preliminary research that we did for our beat making learning. So first we learned about what the components of a beat actually were. They are the bass, melody, drums, and occasionally the chords, vocals, and samples. So the samples would fall under melody, and the vocals would fall under like your actual singer, rapper, whatever, unless it's like an ad lib or the vocal itself is part of the beat. But we learned about the differences between these and how each of them affect each song. So a pop song might require more melody, whereas a hip hop song might require more drums and bass. So for each beat that we're gonna make, we're gonna focus on each part of those that would apply to specifically the genre. Then we learned about DAWs. So the ones that we'll use are GarageBand and Soundtrap, but we also learned about FL Studio and Ableton. So GarageBand is super easy for beginners. Soundtrap is even easier to use for beginners. It has less features, but it is online, so you don't need a specific Mac or Windows for that. For FL Studio, you would need it has more features, but it's very, very complicated compared to the other two. Ableton is very similar to FL Studio, but the only difference is that it has a little bit more specifics, so it's a little bit more different in that way. Sampling is a type of method that's used to create certain melodies and stuff. So sampling specifically, we would use the application called Splice, and it's a great tool when it comes to sampling. So, um, so when it comes to sampling, what I usually do is I tend to use mostly percussion. So you have very different types of percussion based on your genre. Hip hop would require more hi-hats, for example, but it depends completely on what genre you're doing. And there's three different types of sampling that that are like main focus: chopping, layering, and reversing. So chopping would be taking a pre-made melody, beat, movie, something, whatever, and just cutting it up and using certain parts of the beat in your own beat. Layering is just putting different types of those chopping on top of each other essentially, and then reversing is taking a beat and just playing it backwards. So occasionally that can sound good, but sometimes it might not. But it depends completely on what your end goal is. And then one final thing: sampling versus interpolation. Interpolation is um, using, or let's start with sampling. So sample is using um, another person's music and adjusting it in a way to make it sound different, yet it's still similar. And interpolation usually occurs mostly to vocals, so you could be singing something in the same flow, in the same pitch tone as somebody else, or rapping something with the same flow as someone else, and that would be interpolating a certain rapper. And you can do that in beats too. So you could be creating a beat similar to like bum 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 bum, but you could like that, for example, that's a drum, but you could use a different type of drum and be bim 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 or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, those are the main things we focused on, and yeah, that's most of our research.
All right, so in this next segment, we're going to teach you all how to make a beat on the Soundtrap digital audio workstation. So this is the one that I work with primarily for my DP music class. And so this is where we make the bulk of our songs. And the way that I compose my creative process for this, it always starts with a bass line. You know, bass lines are, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of a song. And so I want to make sure that I have a good bass line. And so I'll start by just playing around on a bass that I like the sound of, and I'll see if I can find a little pattern, which is usually something offbeat. And the one that I found for this particular song is that's going to be a 2-measure pattern in C minor. So now that I've got that and I like it, I'm going to go over and do this in piano roll to make sure that the rhythms are quantized. So that's what this is me doing right here. And I'm going to play it back periodically to make sure that I've got the all like the correct timings. Like that was too short, for example. So I'm going to make this 2 longer and move this over. And then for the eighth notes, these are clearly too long, so I'm going to shorten these to get them to fit. So the first measure Perfect. And so now we go to the second measure, which is going to start the same. Up to the B flat. And then down. Check that one. Now that we've got the bass line, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to loop it for a couple measures, just to have that, going kind of in the background. And so now I like to think of a chord progression. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to listen to this back and just think of what I could put for a chord progression over this. So like I said, the next part of my creative process is composing a chord progression to go over the bass line. And the way I do this is I look at this from a very, like music theory standpoint. So I look at the notes of the bass line and I think, what are some chords that I could build either on those notes or chords that include those notes? Because I like, as someone who enjoys jazz music and playing in jazz band, I like adding jazz chords or some ambient dissonance. If you guys aren't that advanced, then that's no problem. But that's just where I'm at, and that's where I like to compose. So as I was actually looking for chords, I'll find a synth that I like, and I just listen to the chord preset. Because you look here in Soundtrap, you've got presets that you can just play, and you can let them. You can just hear what they sound like. Now you got a C minor, a B flat, a D diminished. And so you can just play with those and just add them and just listen how they sound over the bass line. And actually, as I was composing this, I realized that I want to take this in a different direction than I initially had. My initial bass line was too, mean sounding. And so I went back and actually changed the ending of it so that the new bass line sounds something like this. And this is actually a really important part of composing. It's arguably the most important. You're gonna come up with new ideas and you're gonna want to take your song in a new direction, and that's more than okay. Don't limit yourself to being stuck in one kind of music. That's one of the biggest things that me and Dhruv have learned so far through this is do not limit yourself to only your original idea. If something else comes along and you want to change something, be open to that, because oftentimes that change is going to take you in a much better direction. So after I changed that, I just went through and I just listened to some of the chords that, oh, my bad. To some of the chords that they had on these presets. Like you had your C minor, A flat 7. I like the sound of that. I like the sound of the B flat. I like the sound of the E flat major 7. And so I just played around with how these could sound. And so the actual finished product, or I say finished, but the chord progression that I've come up with to go along with the bass line sounds like this. And I think that has a very interesting sound to it. Which I think is similar to, Playboi Carti style production, but also it's very jazzy, and that's something that I really enjoy. So now that I've got that chord progression, what I'm going to take is I'm just going to select it. I'm going to Control C, and I'm just going to paste it for every 2 measures, just along with the bass line. So now that's kind of my backing track. That's what I'm composing against. The next step here is to come up with a drum line, percussion part, and then a melody, and then think of how I'm going to layer this, okay? Because I don't want just everything to come in at the same time. I want to bring in things at different times. I want to cut some things out. And so what I do is I like to compose everything that I have, and then I want to figure out how to layer them afterwards. So now that we've got the basic chord progression of the bass line, we're going to put a percussion part over this and then a melody. And that'll really complete the beat. So starting at measure 5, because we don't want everything to come in at the same time, I'm going to pick a drum kit that I like, and I was playing around with this off camera, and I really like this way ops kit sounds. And so I'm just going to listen to the song and just see how I want the percussion to kind of interact with the rest of the beat. And just listen to that. I think that a slower beat, kind of off rhythm, would fit it, right? Like just a little basic kick pattern, kick snare pattern, maybe something like. And I think that sounds honestly perfect. So I'm gonna take that and loop it. And the way I like to do my drum parts is I like to have all the different elements on separate tracks, just because that gives me more freedom. And so now I'm gonna come here to the open hi hat, and I'm gonna program the sounds. And I want to have some space between the cymbal runs. Let's see if this sounds good. And I think that sounds great. So now that we have that drum part, I'm gonna see. I honestly think that's enough. I don't need anything else for the drum part. I could add, if I was spending more time on this, some other special effects or nuances, but I don't want this video to run too long. So that's what the drum part is gonna sound like with the cymbals now. And so now, starting at measure 9, we're just going to throw in a simple melody. And so this is honestly probably the hardest part of composing. I think is finding the melody, because it's honestly the most nuanced part of composing. The percussion part is easy to program. The bass line is very trial and error. So are the chords. But this really, a bad melody, no matter how good the rest of your beat is, will always ruin your song. And so I think that it's really important that you have a good synth. And I think I like the way I've played around with this synth before, and I like the way that Broken Square sounds. So in the key of C minor, I'm just gonna play around and see what kind of melody I can put over this chord progression. And so this is, again, where my music theory background helps. But even if you're not from like a jazz background or a music theory background, you just got to think of, if you look at the notes in your bass line or in your chords, what are some notes that are the same? Because those are the notes that are going to sound good, or some notes that are, if they're not the same, they're not dissonant. You want to avoid, half steps. So we're going to go to a piano roll, and I'm just going to see. I like that little run down the scale. Oh. For the second measure, we're going to come back up. And then we're going to see how this sounds over the chords. And I think that works great. And we'll call it a 4-measure melody, because this isn't going to be a full-length song. So it'll be a little truncated. I want to have some skips, right? This is very up and down the scale so far. I want to see if I can add a little bit of jumps. Right, come up and see how that sounds. And then go to the F. And see how that sounds. I'm going to move this over to make it sound more on beat. And I think I'm actually really happy with the way that melody sounds. We're going to mute I'm gonna delete this because this has nothing. Um, I'm gonna mute the rest of these, and I'm just gonna listen to the melody in a vacuum, which is, I think, a good way to just, does it sound good on its own? Because if it doesn't, it's probably not gonna sound good with the other things. And I think that it's got a decent amount of variety. Again, I'm doing this really fast just because we don't want the video to go on for 2 hours. But this process is obviously a lot more nuanced when you're doing it for a full length song, which is what we've been doing. But this is the gist of it. I mean, this is what you kind of want to do. You want to think of just what would sound good, and then just go straight trial and error with that, because that's gonna give you the most success. So I'm gonna move this over, and then we're gonna see how it sounds with everything added. And if we turn up the chords a little bit and the bass down just so we can actually hear it, I think this is a really good rudimentary song. I mean, this is not going to be, it's not going to win any Grammys but for something that, we made in 20 minutes, this is what me and Dhruv really learned throughout this process. It's kind of how to, you give yourself a routine to follow, and then you follow that and you get something basic like this. And then what we've been doing is we'll take this little snippet that we've made, and we'll work with it, and we'll spend, maybe a day on it, if we really, really care about it and think that think we can make something great out of it. And then we'll just work on it, and we'll add nuances, and we'll make this a full length song, which obviously we're not going to do for this. But I mean, this is just the way that we composed in Soundtrap, starting with bass, looking at chord progressions, and then looking at melodies that kind of fit the aesthetic. You want to give yourself a kind of, I guess, vibe that you want to adhere to throughout the song. And I think that this is a good example of how we've learned to do that in Soundtrap.
So welcome back to this video. In this video specifically, we'll be going over how to use Splice and how you can use that with GarageBand. So Splice is basically a tool that you use if you want to sample some things. So sample being a melody, maybe some drums, something like that you want to put in your song. So we're not going to be creating our own drums or anything like Octavian did in his video, and we'll be using maybe a drum from Splice. We'll use it hand in hand with the GarageBand. Do a little bit of mixing in GarageBand and see how it sounds there. So for this video, I'll be going for like a West Coast trap sort of beat. So you can see there's already some here, but basically what a pack is, which is what I'll be using, is a set of different songs or loops or one shots. So let's go to loops. So for example, a loop for like a percussion, it says right here the tags would be like this. Let's wait for it to play. I'm not sure why these ones aren't playing, but essentially they're just songs, or like mini songs. So that can be either a melodic loop or a percussion loop. And then one shots are just one note or that's loud. But yeah, so like that would be a melodic stack. Apologies for the randomness. But let's go to like a one shot, for example. So a one shot, as I was saying, it's just a single note, maybe two or three. So like, yeah, that would be a hi-hat. Let's turn the volume up a bit. That'd be a snare, hi-hat, a cymbal. So basically anything like that. So for this video, we'll be focusing on a West Side stack. So the one I'm going to use is right here, left coast bounce. So we can actually hear. So Splice provides for the preview. So let's listen to the preview. So that's obviously a professional beat. That would be a little bit harder to make, but we'll be working with what we have. So let's just try to find a good melodic stack. Oh, that's pretty good. So we have an option to create a stack here. So what we'll do is you'll click create a stack, and you can see it's going to be like one loop of this, and it automatically gives you the chord it's going to be in and the tempo. So that sounds pretty good. We can select a style from here. So we'll be going for hip hop, so we're going to choose hip hop right here. And let's see what it gives us. So that doesn't sound the best, honestly. What we'd want to go for is more of a West Side type of drum. So that sounds fine, but let's go to drums and see what we can find there. Drums and then loops. So let's see what we have. That sounds pretty good. Let's try to find one with a similar BPM to the one that we're using. So 100 or like 101 around that. Let's just keep scrolling. If the thing is, there's no one that matches this tempo exactly. So, just for the sake of this video, I'm trying to find one to make it a bit easier. Maybe not drums. Let's go for like a melodic or song starter is what we're gonna look for. That's like a hip hop sort of like, or like a R&B type of intro. That's pretty good. And the thing is, I think a good trick would be that in the name there's gonna be some sort of resemblance to like a pack in a pack. So like it's called a WAP. You can see it says WAP here. So maybe if you search up WAP, oh, so it appears it's only one thing there, but in some, the name itself would guide you to a mini pack. I think we're gonna just keep this, honestly. So let's go find a good drum. Let's see how that sounds together. We can drag this loop right in here. That sounds a lot better, honestly. We needed like a more like high, like a hard hitting one. Let's try to add this one. We need like, we're going for like a bouncy sort of drum. So just for like context, what I'm looking for, I can put this back. The like yo in the back. That's what we're looking for. Or we might. Let's see how this sounds. We can also mute individual tracks like this, and we can solo them out like this. So I don't think that sounds too good. Let's try to keep looking. Oh, I'm scared of the instruments. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Oh, what? Wonder why. Maybe it's because it's too fast. So what we'll do is we'll go for like a 168 tempo type of thing. Just to see, just because, um, damn. So it appears to be a bit too long. So let's just go back to what we had. That's another issue. So quite honestly, Splice might not be the best thing, but it's good for starters because of like the amount of various different samples they offer. Octavian's method of creating your own samples is a lot better, honestly. But just for the sake of using it with GarageBand, we're just gonna try to quickly cook something up. Not really. We need some like standout drums. No, that's a bit too much. I like those. I like the rhythm of those drums. It's just that they don't. The rhythm itself doesn't fit with the original sample we have. Let's order it from BPM once again to get the closest to what we need. That sounds pretty good. The snaps occur in the quiet parts of the beat, which sounds pretty satisfying. So let's see if you can find a recommended drum. For this beat specifically, our drums would need to be very, very loud. So yeah, once again, Spice is not providing us with the exact type of beats or drums we want. We want West Side. Might just do it something like this. So honestly, the melody is the best part of this beat. The drums don't do it so good. So we're just gonna save this just so we can get to the part where we use it in GarageBand. So we'll go to stacks, I believe. Yeah, so octave is what we have here. We're gonna click this button not this button right here. We're gonna go to view sample and click export. And we're gonna export everything as stems. So it costs some credits to export it, we'll export it. You can see my credits went down here. We'll go to GarageBand, open it up in our and open them and put them in here. So you can see they all open up individually here. Not sure why. So to loop things in GarageBand, you just want to highlight everything and loop it like this. So let's try to mix it a little bit. So let's try to bring our melody down a little bit more. So to do that, we'll click A, and then we'll click, we'll go to our melody, which is this first part. So we can bring it down a little bit. Let's see how it sounds. Maybe a little bit louder. And then for another part, what we're going to do is we will go back to A, and we can change anything from pan, echo, and reverb, which are the basic automation things we'll need to use. Everything else would be for more advanced. But let's go to example reverb, which won't fit well with this because we don't have any audio. But let's just see what it does. So we're gonna go here. Only listen to this is to click that button. Turn the reverb all the way up. Let's see what happens. You can hear it creates a bit of an echo. So let's hear how it sounds with the beat. So I think for the purpose of this video, that should be enough of a beat because we would need perhaps audio over this, maybe someone rapping to automize and mix everything else. But just for basic review of what we learned in this video, we learned specifically how Splice can contain different songs in stacks. We learned how to use Splice. So let's delete this and go to a new trap thing just so we can relearn what we did. So let's go to song starters. So yeah, we can take one of these, a song starter, and then over a song starter or a melodic stack like this, we can take another loop of a drum like this, and then we can add any other instrument we may need. So every single pack is different. You can add electric piano, you can add bells, guitar, whatever you need, but you can use Splice to however you need it for your beat. And then after that, we can export it all. So if you go to a stack, so for example, let's pick up a new stack that I was making. Yeah, so this one's a bit better. We can go to view sample, we can click export, and we can export all of them as stems. And then after we export all of them as stems, we can just simply drag them to GarageBand and automate everything we need here. So that's just a basic overview on how to use Splice in specifically mixing and in GarageBand. Thank you for watching.